welcome to another bookish video from me, Johanna, me, my dog and books. And it's time. It's kind of earlier than I normally do, but there's only a few days left of the month and I ain't going to finish no more, so it's time for my January reading wrap up. Woof! Now, I genuinely don't know how many books I've read. I've just quickly updated my story graph with, well, I finished 2 books today, one in audio and one in physical, and it says, oh, I read 16 books, which was the equivalent of 5,131 pages. So I'm going to go through, if you've not watched any of my reading wrap-ups before, I always go through some of my story graph stats and then we get right into the books. So my moods, see a graph. Oh, well, there's reflective, doesn't normally show in there, so it's dark, mysterious, reflective and emotional, intense. Again, quite a few of those are showing up every single wrap-up month, aren't they? I'm just looking down at my laptop just in case you're wondering, because I can't remember any of this stuff off the top of my head. Pace, again, most of the books I read are medium pace, 73% medium. I don't know what the slow one was, I can't remember what I rated the slow one. Page numbers, either under 300 or under 5. 88% fiction and 13% non-fiction. And then here's my genres, as you'll see: thriller, mystery, crime, horror, and then contemporary, and the rest are all, what's the lowest? Classics, kind of. And next is my format: 63% audio, 19% digital, which is ebook, and 19% print. Big on the audio right now. It's helped me survive. It's helped me survive. And then my average rating for the whole month was 3.3, which is not too shabby. It's not too shabby. So those are my stats. And now I need to check the books, because there'll be some that I've already returned to the library, or I've maybe only read on ebook. So let me check what I've recently read. I'm hoping I've got all my books here, so checking all the ones that I've read in January. Oh, one I have definitely, 2 I've definitely returned. Right, okay, oh, it's right at the bottom. The first one I read in January was, this was my first book of 2025. It was The Book Eaters by Sunyi, and I picked this up secondhand from charity shop. Could not. I mean, it talked about book eaters, and the premise of this is you live in a world where, now I think it's in the oldie times, well, certainly it felt like historical fiction, although it is like kind of fantasy. So hidden across England and Scotland live 6 old book-eater families. The last of their lines, they exist on the fringes of society, subsist on a diet of stories and legends, so they literally eat books. Children are rare and their numbers have dwindled. So when Devon has her second child and they are born a dreaded mind-eater, which is the opposite of a book-eater, they eat your mind. It's a perversion of its own kind, it says. She flees before she can be turned into a weapon for the family or worse. So it's a story of escape, a mother's savage devotion, and a queer love that will electrify readers looking for something beguiling, thrilling, strange and new. And I have to say, see if you're a fantasy reader, check this out. This was probably a wee bit more fantasy than I normally read. But in saying that, I thought the characters were really well written. I thought the world that was created was great. I probably would just have given it more than 3 out of 5 if I was an avid fantasy reader, but fantasy tends not to be my go-to genre. By the way, if you hear a bark, it's because Lucy is standing at the patio right now and she's gone a few times, and I know exactly why she's wanting out, because I've filled up the bird feeders. And because our garden is carnage after Storm Owen, like the fence we've got a bit of a barricade. Anyway, that's for you to see in my weekend reading vlog. But yes, I may be rudely interrupted. So yes, I would say definitely read it if you're a fantasy fan, and if you don't mind a bit of fantasy, check it out. I like the premise, and also it's just a stunning book, and it's a book about books, or eating books. I wonder what books taste like. Just paper, really. The next was Strawberry Shortcake Murder by Joanne Fluke. Now, I read, and I have a good few of these. And I think back in the day, years ago, I bought them because they sounded cute. And I read the Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, which is book number 1. So this is book 2 in the Hannah Swanson series. And I love a cozy mystery. The best palate cleanser. I just feel like I'm having a nice, like watching an afternoon movie, right? But this, despite the fact it wasn't written in the 70s or 80s, which I thought, but early noughties, or maybe 2007, 2010 plus, there are references to like jovial and not very considered references to domestic violence in this. There's Native American racism, there's body shaming, and I have to say, I don't think after that I can read any more of Joanne Fluke's books, because you should know better by then, and you need to take the piss out of Native Americans for like a joke in this, or a story, like not even it wasn't even a plot line. I mean, nobody needs to do that ever, that's just racist, but I'm like, what was the purpose? Just felt like, anyway. Nah. Then I read, has anyone seen Charlotte's Letter, which is, I say the new, but the latest Nicci French, because it came out February last year. I was lucky enough that one of my friends gave me her proof after she'd read it. Oh dear. I've not got on great with Nicci French books. Their ability to write kind of mystery crime thrillers. I know they have a great sort of reputation, but of the books I've read, which I think are more recent ones, I've not really gelled with. And this one, I thought it was way too long for a crime thriller. I was intrigued at the start. I mean, kudos for short chapters. I was intrigued at the start, and then by the time I was like, oh, this is going on for ages. Like, it was a past and present timeline. So Charlotte Slater, you start with her husband's 50th, I think, birthday party. His family are all there and she doesn't turn up, and then she's missing, and then it's 10 years later, a period of time later, and there's people looking into this case. Yeah, it almost feels forgettable already. So this one wasn't for me. I actually remember when I posted something on my Instagram stories about this, someone did say to me, let's say you making yourself a bed nest. Wait, you see this? Determination here, because I'm ignoring her and not letting her out the back. When she doesn't need the toilet, she's just been out a walk. Just gonna knock my laptop over. Look at that. Patty, are you just watching this? That's my foot, by the way. You just watching what's going on? Oh, like, you get so excited whenever anyone talks to you. I don't know when she's going to be settled. You're just going to hear this huffing and puffing while I'm recording my wrap up. No? 40 seconds in and we're still here. She's going to fall off the seat. It's my laptop here with my... She's so determined. You're literally going to knock this laptop over. I'm holding it with my other hand. Don't shut it over, let's see with your butt. It'll be one massive harumph when she settles. Please just fast forward this if you're not interested. This just makes me laugh. I wonder why I have blankets on every seat for such eventualities as this. My God, we're a minute and a half in. Still not funny. Patty's given up watching. Don't want to interrupt, you know. She looks like she's very concentrating. I think we're settled. Normal service is resumed and she's not going to knock my laptop over. Anyway, someone had responded to this on my stories on Instagram to say their earlier books are better. So I might try one of them. Next one was one that you lovely folks recommended, and it was A Ruin by Dervla McTiernan. A solid 3.75 out of 5 was this sort of police procedural crime mystery thriller. So one of you recommended this after I had reviewed and had it in my honourable mentions for 2024, which was What Happened to Nina by this author, which is a standalone, and I loved it. I really enjoyed this. I think I loved Nina a bit more, but only because I'm not... It follows Cormac Riley, who's a detective in this series. Dervla is an Irish author, so it's an Irish crime thriller, and Cormac is... he's actually a really great character, but I tend not... Well, I say that, right? There is a Robert Hunter, Chris Carter series, which I definitely would read. So I really enjoyed him as a character. We're following... It starts in the past, which you don't realise until... And there's an incident that's happened with the two characters. Now, who is it? Maud and Jack. Maud's 15 and Jack is 5. And Cormac... very early, maybe is it 20 years earlier? Yeah, it is. Turns up at the home and their mother, who's kind of been neglected by them, lies dead upstairs. Because of the age of the kids, 15 and 5, they're kind of separated, blah, blah, blah. And then you're 20 years later and Maud comes back to the UK because she's now living in Australia, I think. And... Jack, and she returns because they believe Jack has completed suicide, I think. Yeah, but she's not sure. Anyway, because of stuff from the past, Cormac ends up getting back on this case because he gets asked to look at cold cases, which is her mum's case. But she's like asking questions about like, I don't think my brother would have killed himself, yada yada. So there's a really good mystery series. I've got a notification. Mystery plot in this. And I was gripped all the way through. Why did I give it 3.75 is a really good rating for me. So that's just to say, I think it's because maybe I gave Nina 4.5, and What Happened to Nina I preferred. But I would definitely want to read the next one in the series. I don't know how many books there actually are in the Cormac Riley series, but I really liked him as a detective. And Dervla McTiernan writes really good, I say complicated, but not in an off-putting way, in a really clever, smart way, mystery thrillers. And then the next one, which I don't have because I took it back to the library because it had a reserve on it, is Muslims Don't Matter by Sayeeda Warsi. So Sayeeda Warsi is, I think she's a lawyer by trade, but one of the first British Muslim members of Parliament, unfortunately in the Tory party, but anyway, we can forgive her that. And this is a very poignant book that came out last year about, I think there's something on the, I'm just going to check the synopsis. So Muslims Don't Matter is a stimulating and timely read that will resonate with anyone who cares about social justice, equality and human rights, particularly those interested in exploring the complexities of Islamophobia, racism and the intersection of politics and identity, which is kind of a good summary of it, because she goes through, it's actually quite a short book, I think it's less than 200 pages. Yeah, it's 176 pages, and it was so pertinent. So like, as she was talking about how much she has had to vocalise or be the voice of Muslims in Parliament and also almost be the good Muslim, and she was like, I'm sick of it, I'm sick of this apologising for being Muslim, la la la, understandably. And so she starts to document where both in politics and in UK society Islamophobia has just risen, and the stereotypes that are given to those that practice Islam, and some of it, when I was reading it, because obviously we had the summer of far-right riots in the UK, and after the Southport horrific killing, and then there was a rise of sort of far-right racism and an increase, an absolutely documented increase in Islamophobia. It was so pertinent reading that, because there's points where even just in the last few months of last year, there were stereotypes and stuff about grooming gangs, which she was referencing in her book back in like 2018, 2017, 2019, and I'm reading it going, oh my god, this is like today. There was so much of it that was enraging, powerful, insightful, informative. It's and I hate using this word, but it's not a word, it's a phrase. It's a necessary read. I highly recommend it, especially if you're in the UK. I would say read, but she's a UK politician and makes reference to UK politics, but that doesn't mean you couldn't read it if you aren't in the UK. I gave that 4.5 out of 5. It was outstanding. Then another one I picked up from the library and also had to return because it had a reserve on it was Memory of Animals by Clare Fuller. Now, I was really excited to read this because it was kind of like a post-apocalyptic sort of, was it dystopian kind of virus story, which weirdly she'd started writing before COVID and then kind of finished it during. It's like, I think that's what, anyway, it says, an absorbing, emotionally charged novel that will captivate readers who appreciate complex, introspective storytelling. Well, that's a lot of words, I never wrote this. Are fascinated by the intersection of science and human experience and are drawn to stories of resilience, hope and transformative power. Yes, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as I hoped I would. Now I'm trying to find where my review is, because right now my mind is drawing a blank. So like, rather than that blurb before, in this story you have a small group of people who are in this kind of hospital environment for like vaccine trials for the outbreak that's just happened, and then they as they were starting these trials, and obviously starting the trials, that was before the world went shit, and they kind of wake up from, and they're like, what the heck's happened to the world, and everybody out there is not in a good place. And so you follow some good characters through this. I don't know, I felt a bit detached from the characters. You follow them and there's like, is it Neffy who's the main character? One of the main characters. And yeah, there was some stuff about, so Neffy was training to be a kind of biologist or some shot. She had this random letters written to an octopus, which I kind of did like, but I didn't really get the point in it. Oh yes, and there was one of the other characters who had developed this, who was in the trials, I think to raise money to be able to get his idea, his kind of invention off the ground, which was called revisiting. And then what he would do is allow you to revisit a kind of past memory or point in time in your mind, where you, not in real life but in your mind. So like, say a lost loved one or something, and you can experience that like people were starting to get addicted to it and things like that. But he starts doing this with Neffy, and in all seriousness, I can't remember the end of this book. So I gave it 3 out of 5, so I kind of enjoyed it, but didn't love it. That was that was my really bad review. Now for another 4.5. It is The Girl in Red by Christina Henry. So this is Christina's, it's not really a retelling, it's a reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood, but you're in a world where, again, it is like dystopian. So in a world where this virus or whatever has broken out across the globe, and everybody's been told to make their way to government camps, but Red, which is her nickname, I can't remember her actual name. Doesn't matter, we call her Red, and she's like, so she's got her mum and dad and her brother, and I'm like, right, we need to make our way to one of these government camps, and she's like, nah, I've seen enough horror and dystopian movies, zombie movies, I know the drill, we don't trust the government, we need to go into the woods, and we need to get to Grand's, which involves going into the woods. Patty, you can hear growling, Patty's seeing the neighbours getting into their car. God forbid should they use their own driveway and their car. And so Red, they decide to make this adventure, which, as you can imagine, going anywhere in this new world is dangerous and fraught with many horrible things, and she's exposed to a lot of this. And I don't want to give you any spoilers as that journey continues. Her life changes, and what she starts to learn is the things that you're terrified of in the woods isn't per se the big scary virus or whatever's happening to people. It is sometimes the men in the woods, and the men that were supposed to be there as part of the government or who are kind of out vigilanting. This was brilliant. It was dark, it was tense. You had a great feminist role model in Red. I loved her as a character. I really enjoyed this. I thought it kept me gripped till the bitter end. And Christina Henry has written other books like this. There's The Lost Boy, Alice, I think there's The Horseman. Those are the only 2 that I've got. I love this. Brilliant. Love Christina Henry's writing so far. The next was an e-arc that I got, which is already published. I was just dead late in reading it. The Woman Who Lied by Clare Douglas. So Clare Douglas is a pretty decent thriller writer, mostly sort of domestic or psychological thrillers, I think tends to be her bag. Some I've really enjoyed, and others have just been a bit okay. This one I really enjoyed. So we follow, and I'm just going to read the kind of, Amelia Ward is the main character, and she's a best-selling author, right? Crime writer, but she begins to notice eerie coincidences between her novels and real-life events, leading to a series of deaths resembling her fictional victims. As the line between fiction and reality blurs, she must uncover who's behind the killing and why they're targeting her family. So first you have an author, a story about a book plot, but also like someone emulating that, like copycat. But the thing is, what you soon discover is she's a crime thriller writer, but she wants to make this manuscript that she's just about to submit, like her 10th and final in the crime writing series, so she can move on to different storytelling. And then so she starts to wonder, is this some, and only a few people have got the manuscript. And so when things from the manuscript start to happen in real life, she starts to look at those close few around her who know anything about that story. It was in true, like, was there different POVs? I think there was. In true Clare Douglas style, relatively short chapters, it's very good pace, pretty fast paced, kept me gripped. And I think there is, I might be wrong, yeah, can't remember now. I've read 16 books, how am I supposed to remember? But I really enjoyed it. It kept me gripped. I remember going to bed at night and really wanting to pick it up as a sign of a great book. So if you're looking for a good sort of crime mystery thriller that includes an author and books, pick that up. It's already available. I can't remember when it came out. When did it come out? Oh, first published in 2023. I was very late in reading that year. It's not Telepublisher. I'm terrible at that with e-arcs and NetGalley. Then there's another one which, no, I didn't get it. I listened to it in audio. Say Nothing, A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland by Patrick Radden Keefe. Now, Patrick Radden Keefe wrote Empire of Pain, which is about the Sackler family and the opioid crisis in America, which if you don't know anything about, that is a mind-blowing story of power, money, of a family that created the opioid, created and got rich off of the opioid epidemic in the States. Utterly dumbfounding. It's a book that the TV series like Dopesick and stuff are all based on. Anyway, he's a really good author who deep dives into a topic, does millions of research, and then writes about it. But in saying that, he has no connections to the Troubles, as they're called, in Northern Ireland. Despite, he says this in acknowledgements, despite his name, he comes at this knowing a bit about it but not having a view on either side. So he does a really, really good job. I think it was 4 years of research, 100 interviews, and lays it all out, showing different stories on both the Republican and the Loyalist side, the IRA, some of the stuff that happened in. So I was in primary school during the 80s when a lot of the bombings, the IRA and a lot of this stuff was happening. Some of the stuff from the kind of late 60s, early 70s I didn't really remember, so it was really insightful to read it. It was absolutely mind-blowing book. It was jaw-dropping, some of the stuff, and also like things I'd forgotten about like during that time, and also how the memory of those, or the memories that they are allowed to or not allowed to have of those who were played a part in the IRA, was mind-blowing. It's now a dramatisation on Disney Plus, which I really, really like to watch. So I highly recommend that. It was a phenomenal book. Then, as a palate cleanser, I picked up this random book on audio, and it was called An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helen Tursten. Never heard of it. It kind of says what it is. An elderly protagonist out and about doing some shenanigans. I think it's part of a series. I don't know. It was really short. It was like 3 hours in audio. I kind of loved it. Well, I didn't kind of love it. I kind of enjoyed it. But it says Maud is an 88-year-old Swedish woman with no family, no friends, and no qualms about a little murder. Yeah, so she starts to like pop off people that really annoy her in the building she lives in. Anyway, it was fun. It was short and a nice palate cleanser. Then I read a book. I picked out my TBR box on one of my like January hopeful videos, I think, and it was The Road Through the Wall by Shirley Jackson. I can't remember when. It's a modern classic, but I can't remember when it was published. Let's see. Still getting used to these varifocals. (1948). Oh wow. This edition was published in 2013. It's an old library edition, which, you know how sometimes they withdraw books from the library and then you can buy them for like 20p. So picked this up because I do love a Shirley Jackson. I love so they used to live in the castle. Can't remember, I always get what mixed up with I Capture the Castle, which is a different story, and The Haunting of Hill House. This I didn't love so much. I mean, it's about a neighbourhood where Pepper Street's called. Your suburban neighbourhood, you've got all the people that live in the neighbourhood, and then you have these two kids. Is it Caroline? And who's the other one? I can't remember. I don't think it says. Two kids, not on the back cover anyway, because I can't remember the names. And they're a little bit up to mischief and evil. And so I did think I was going to love it, and I don't know if it's because I read it on audio, because I managed to get it from the library in Libby, and I really struggled to keep up with all the different characters. You can imagine it's a suburban neighbourhood, so there's lots of characters in it. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it other than I kind of couldn't keep track of all the characters and felt like I was disengaged quite a lot from it, and maybe it was just the audio reading experience in this instance. Anyway, if you've read this and loved it, let me know. Then I read a teeny tiny novella. This is probably why I read 16 books. It was The Wood at Midwinter, and this is a lovely, look, lovely illustrations, tiny short book where it's a 19-year-old Meredith Scott is an unusual girl. She can talk to, I'm reading it like this because the light shining up. She can talk to animals and trees, and she's only ever happy when she's walking in the woods. One snowy afternoon, out with her dogs and Apple the pig. This is why this was delightful. Meredith encounters a blackbird and a fox. A darkness falls. A strange figure appears in their midst, and the path of her life is changed forever. This was a wonderful little book, and actually I think I got it from the library, borrowed it from the library, and it's just a lovely one to refer to this time of year. Very seasonal read. I love the writing, and it makes me realise I really do need to read Piranesi. Next up is a book that I read from my shelves. Another one. So that's two off my shelves. No, three. Three, because the Book Eaters and... oh no, four. Book Eaters. Oh, five. This was off my shelf. This was off my shelf. Library book. This was off my shelf. This was off my shelf. And this was off my shelf. Well done me. Well done me. Who knew? Who knew? And this one was off my shelf. And I read this one because I managed to get it on audio from Libby, from the library. And I thought, oh, that's the kind of book that sounds quite good and that I will pick up. And it says, one twin ran, the other vanished, neither escaped. Mirrorland by Carole Johnstone. I think this is the debut. So we have twin sisters, Kat and Elle. And Kat's twin sister, Elle, has disappeared. But there's one thing Kat is for sure, her sister isn't dead. She would have felt it, she would have known. So we start at the very beginning with back in the day when they were young, and then all of a sudden we fast forward to many years later when Kat, I think, lives overseas and is contacted by her twin sister's husband, who says, your sister's gone missing. Fear dead. And so she comes back and she's like, she's absolutely not dead. I would know, I would feel it as her twin sister. But she realises by returning back to where she's from, where our twin sister Elle did not leave, their kind of childhood hometown, she realises that she has to confront a lot of the things that happened in Kat and Elle's past that got them to where they are today. Honestly, this is so full of twists and turns and so many unreliable stories that you're like, I don't know how to believe, maybe it's this, but... and the author takes you down so many rabbit holes, and what you start to see is like when Kat is getting almost what she thinks is closer to the truth, she seems to be in even more danger. I thought this was so gripping. I don't know if the author's written anything else. I think this is the debut. Yeah, because there's no other books mentioned. And also, like, if you like I know I read it in audio, right, but if you like a book with a map, which is the childhood home that they grew up in, which there's a lot of things around, but Elle continued to live in, or no, she didn't, ended up living in. You'll see, I'm not going to give any spoilers. And anyway, you do not know who to believe just during this story. You don't know who to trust, and you don't know what's happened to Elle. It's a brilliant thriller. I gave it 4 out of 5, but it's probably easily 4.5. 4.5 out of 5. Highly recommend. Both in audio and I would assume also in physical. Then, literally today, I finished How to Age Disgracefully by Clare Pooley. This is a delightful book that, see, if you're looking just for something a bit uplifting and a bit humorous, this is a book for you. It is filled with senior citizens who are the main characters in the joy of this book, as well as a woman in her 50s who picks up her first job for a long time after being a mum and having adult kids. She starts to run senior citizen club in the local community centre. The roof of the community centre, there's an incident, and so all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, if we don't have this community centre, we won't have our senior citizens club, we won't have the nursery and everything, all the community events that happen in this. So they're like, save the community centre is the hook that brings all these senior citizens together. But you've also got the main character Daphne, who joins the club, where she's like, I've just turned 17, I've got no friends and I'm all alone and I don't want to spend it with a bunch of old fogies, but I'll go along and see what this senior citizens group is like. And Daphne's hilarious. Art, who's funny as well. William, I think's another one. Anna, there's a whole group of them that are just hilarious. There's a rogue knitter who like knits bits pieces of art and like plops in there, so they call her Yarnsy, like a wool spin on Banksy. And you have Ziggy, who is a teenage boy still at school but finds himself as a single dad with his mum helping him, and he realises one of the senior citizens often offers to do a bit of babysitting for him while he tries to do some extracurricular studies so he can go to university. There is so much community and quirky characters in this book that it just made me smile. It's joyful, it's fun, and it's light-hearted. I highly recommend. And then I read The Book of X, which just came out in January, by Sarah Rose Etter. This is a tiny book, less than 230 pages. And this has taken me ages to review, only because I don't know how to put into words how I feel about this book. I thought it was amazingly written. I think the subject matter that it touches on is outstanding, but before I go into that, I'll read you the synopsis, because trying to explain what this book about is hard. So it tells the tale of Cassie, who is a girl born with her stomach twisted in the shape of a knot, like literal shape of a knot, and that is something that she has inherited from her mum and her gran. And from her childhood, her parents on the family meat farm, a farm, they have like a meat quarry, so they go out and like rip bits of meat like you would a quarry for stone or whatever you use a quarry for, but like it's meat, hence the cover. To a desk job in the city to finally experience love, she grapples with her body, men and society, all while imagining a softer world than the one she's in. Twinning the drama of everyday school-age crushes, paying the bills, the sickness of parents, with the surreal rivers of thighs, men for sale, and fields of throats. Yes, the body part throats. Cassie's realities alternate to create a blurred, fantastic world of haunting beauty. So yeah, that's why I can articulate exactly what it's about, because that there is the synopsis. I mean, overall, this is beautifully written, it's beautifully imagined, it's surreal, it's dark, but it also has a lot of commentary about women's bodies, especially Cassie, who's such a torment. I feel like she's so tormented, but in the same way there's hope for her, but yeah, it was so bleak, where she's grown up with kind of lack of sense of self and lack of medical care and taken advantage of by especially the men in her life, and just her trying to find her sense of self. And it's told in a few different ways, in that you have it kind of written like this, which is sort of the main narrative. So you'll have this part of the story where she's talking about, you know, her actual life, and then whatever they're talking about, you find at the end of that part. So what's this one about? Workers. So this is probably when she's got herself a job in the city. Most workers spend 1,896 hours per year at the office. The average office worker spends 50 minutes per day looking for lost files. So there's a bunch of like random bulleted facts to do with the topic that is the current Cassie's life there. And then you find there's a vision part, which, so you'll have main narrative, bullets of facts, her vision, and so every time of whatever's happening in her life, she has this vision of where it's a much nicer, warm version of what's really happening to her, which just makes it so sad. Phenomenally written. Apparently, I think I read in the reviews that the author was isolated in Iceland when she was writing this, which, if that is the case, unconfirmed, but if that's the case, this makes a lot of sense. Like, just everything around it. It's unique. It's quite graphic at bits, so not for the faint-hearted, but recommend it. Solid 4 out of 5 stars. And then, last but not least, my final book of the month is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. I pre-ordered the special edition, which was signed by the man himself, and I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I've given it a solid 3. What have I given it? 3.5 out of 5. So for me, it felt a bit long. I'm like this with movies, right? I think unless you are in fantasy books, right, which are all world building and there's whole politics and that's where you can get away with a big chunk of a book. Or you're Barbara Streisand and you've written about your life, right? See, other books, stop being over too much of a 350 page mark, right? I'm not sure there's much need for it. I'm the same with movies though. Movies have liked to stretch themselves out to 3 hours or almost 3 hours. Stick with 90 minutes. Tell your story, tell it succinctly. Says me that's rambling on about all of this. So that was a bugbear of mine. What I would say is there's been a lot of criticism about this book not being witchy enough, which I kind of disagree with, because it may take till about a third in or 30% in before it gets any witchy stuff, but after that there is witchy stuff. So I don't know if people were expecting it to be 100% witchy, but by that means about 70 to 65% of the book is witchy in my thoughts generally. Anyway, the fact Grady Hendrix can write this story about a group of young girls, and is this set in the 70s, I think, who are sent to a school, well, a home for wayward girls. Basically, these girls have got themselves pregnant. Well, not got themselves, should I say. They might have been impregnated, raped, who knows their stories. In the instance of our main character, Fern, she's just had an accident with a guy, but other girls have different stories. So they are all in this house for wayward girls, Wellwood House it's called, in Florida, where they're sent by their family to give birth in secret, and their babies are put up for adoption. Remind you of the Irish laundries that run by the convents at all? Anyway, It's a very pertinent story, a powerful story, and one that, I mean, as a woman you cannot but be angered. And they're in this place to just give birth, get rid of the babies, go home and resume normal life, apparently. But a couple of weeks into them being there, the mobile library comes along and Mrs. Parisi, anyway, a librarian, I can't remember her name, gives them a book about, a cult book about witchcraft, and suddenly they have power, and suddenly they start to use this power. And then stuff happens. And I don't want to go into too much detail, there's lots of stuff, some of it, and there is also then lots of, as you can imagine, quite graphic birthing scenes in this book as well, which sometimes I struggled with as someone who doesn't want to have kids and doesn't, but hats off Grady Hendrix. If I had not known this was written by you, I would have thought it was written by a woman, because the portrayal of the girls and women in this book is phenomenally done. The characterisation is great. I think the more I'm talking about this, the more I'm thinking it should be closer to 4-star, but I think the length of it, and also it wasn't, I mean, I suppose the horror of it isn't stereotypical horror. The horror of it is what has happened in society, and this is a portrayal of stuff that's happened. Also, when women are just identified as witches because people weren't rid of them or they don't agree with. I mean, that is what a witch really is. So the horror is really of that story rather than stereotypical horror novel. And in that way, half of me goes, Grady Hendrix, you've written these characters so well, I'm in awe, and it's such a powerful, poignant story. And the same instant, like, Grady, only women should be able to write about women in this way. And then I'm like, oh, get over yourself, so maybe not. And it's like, kudos when there's good women rep in a book, especially about this. So actually, the more I talk about it, the more I'm thinking it's 3.75. And I would say check it out if you're okay with that kind of story around women and or young girls who've been looked after women because they find themselves pregnant, and all of the story that goes around that. So on that basis, I would maybe recommend. I have read every single Grady Hendrix book that he's written, and I will continue to read everyone. I enjoyed this. It wasn't my favourite, but I still enjoyed it. That there, if I can get them all, is all the books. I'm not gonna without dropping them in. I read in January. Let me know if you've read any of them, if you plan on reading any of them. Did you have any great reads or not so great reads in January? Oh, this is me going to try and go ta-da! And if there's any here that you loved that I didn't, or I loved and you didn't, or we agreed on the reviews, let me know. And also, hit me in the comments with your books from January, any you'd recommend. It's good to chat, keep the conversation going below. And I just want to say thank you, as always, for watching, for liking. And if you don't already, please do subscribe for more chatter like this. And I look forward to seeing what February beholds. And you'll be pleased to hear Lucy is still curled up on her little bed that she made in a matter of a full 2 minutes, sleeping, and both of them are snoozing away. Patty's eyes are actually like, that way when they're out for the count. They're both sparkled. So it's a quiet rest of the afternoon for us, but I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I want to say thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you in another bookish video very soon. Bye!